Attention. Welcome to the Different Spectrums podcast. We dive into the wild world of mental health discussions. Get ready for profound talks, a sprinkle of humor and sarcasm, and a touch of colorful language. Just a quick heads up, our show reflects our individual opinions, which may not align with the standpoint of the podcast, our featured guests, or any related corporate entities. Our mission? To illuminate through laughter and satire because everyone needs a good chuckle. Chill out and don't stress over the small stuff. Legal troubles? No, thank you. Cancel culture? Please spare us. We'd rather keep this space lawsuit free. So buckle up, have a good time, and join us as we navigate the vibrant realm of mental health on the Different Spectrums podcast. Today's episode is sponsored by BetterHelp. BetterHelp connects you with a licensed therapist who is trained to listen and give you helpful, unbiased advice. By using our link, you can get 10% off your first month of therapy. So, Naz, as a therapist on BetterHelp, what has your experience been like?
I've been doing it since January of 2021, and it's been really fun and exciting. I've been able to reach clients all over the United States and the world. I've had good relationships. I've had folks that I've had for a couple months and a good handful where I've had for almost 2 years now. So it's magnificent. I've enjoyed my time and my clients. I love them.
Awesome. You can do it all from your phone or computer via phone call, video chat, or messaging, however you feel the most comfortable. Let BetterHelp connect you to a therapist who can support you, all from the comfort of your own home. Visit betterhelp.com/DSP or choose Different Spectrums podcast during sign up and enjoy a special discount on your first month. Hey everybody, we back again.
Hey, we're back. We're live.
I'm Spencer, your co-host, and of course we have our licensed clinical therapist, Naz.
Dr. Nas, as I comb my hair.
Sheen, that's what they call it, Sheen. Remember, don't take us too seriously.
Or do. It's completely up to you.
There you go. Also, don't forget to run up those likes for us. We'd really appreciate it. So, for today, we have a special guest. She is a podcast host and producer of a award-winning podcast called Beyond 6 Seconds Podcast, where she helps neurodivergent entrepreneurs, creators, advocates, and more tell their stories. Please welcome Carolyn Kiel to the show.
Hello, hello. Thank you so much. I'm very excited to be here.
We're excited to have you. Can't wait. So let's get into it. So we're actually going to be doing Ghostbusters Afterlife for the show today. We're going to be talking about autistic coded characters in the movie. We're also going to be talking about abandonment, how parents struggle to relate to their autistic children, as well as trauma and how communicating, sometimes needs to be directly, not really from afar. Great topics that we're going to be covering today. Naz, anything before we get into the show?
We'll have some fun around the humor stuff in the first section, right? Got some fun stories around that. That'll be good. And then, of course, there's the trauma throughout it, right? Throughout it being neurodivergent, misunderstood. There's a bunch of different ways we can go with that. Everyone who's probably listened to this podcast has been traumatized in some type of way, neglected, bullied, not really fitting in, trying to assimilate, masking. So we're going to talk a lot about masking. So this is going to be one of them hella neurodivergent, hella autistic podcasts today. We're getting right into it.
Never like that ever.
Yeah, never like that,
Very rare. We have one of those.
Very rare. And that's sarcasm because it's always, I'm going to try to do the wink she did. It's very rare.
Got both your eyes blinked. It's just a blink at that point. It's not even a wink.
It's hard.
Yeah, it is, isn't it?
I feel special. I'm just going to leave it at that.
Okay.
All right. I'm excited. We're going to have some fun. I like this one. I liked the second one too. And the character is definitely hella autistic coded. But along with a lot of other folks got some ADHD stuff in there too, some other interesting things. So let's get into it. Let's have some fun. Whoop, whoop.
Whoop, whoop.
Whoop, whoop.
Hey.
Hey,
that.
there we go.
Right on cue.
First step.
Yeah. I don't know if that was just assimilating towards us or you read the script.
No. Hey.
I did read the script.
Oh, there we go.
Oh, there you go. See, look at
I like strips.
that. They help.
That was so autistic. I like
Yeah,
scripts.
exactly.
Welcome to the show.
Woohoo.
Okay. Nice.
How did you know that?
Because it's a map of seismic activity.
Right.
You're a
But
seismologist?
does that seem so hard to believe?
Figured you for a football coach.
Oh. Thank you.
These don't look tectonic or volcanic.
Okay, Smarty. Here, check this out. This is a volcano, all right? It builds and crests. But this is a tectonic earthquake. Notice a little P wave, followed by a large S wave.
Yeah, I'm not an idiot.
Clearly. Well, this is the pattern in Somerville. Large P wave, small S wave, like an explosion.
Where's it coming from?
I don't know. I set up geophones, but I can't triangulate.
Are you using 3?
Yeah. I know how many sides there are in a triangle.
I just thought you were being obtuse.
Was that a geometry joke?
Yes, that's why I winked.
That's terrible. No, I loved it. Yes, I mean, somehow, a town that isn't anywhere near a tectonic plate, that has no underground volcanic activity, no fault lines, no fracking, no loud music even, is shaking on a daily basis.
Maybe it's the apocalypse.
But Oklahoma never had earthquakes for centuries. But then between 2010 and 2016, they had like 1,000.
Oh, geez, what happened?
Oil and gas. That's what happened. Yeah, they started pumping millions of gallons of salinated water deep into the Arbuckle Formation. And then the porous limestone. Are you drunk? Or are you just really bored? Because I
No.
think I could see you falling asleep.
I just have an allergy to science.
Have you tried Benadryl?
I've tried whiskey.
It's better than Benadryl. But science is amazing. Science is pure. It's an absolute. I mean, it's an answer to all the madness. Why don't you like science? Was Phoebe's dad a scientist,
Oh.
or was...
Gross. No.
No? I'm making an assumption. What's his deal?
Honestly, I don't. It doesn't matter. He was fine with Trevor, but with Phoebe, he couldn't really connect with her. So.
Right. Well, he sounds like a royal dirtbag.
Oh no, he was actually just a very ordinary dirtbag.
Well, hey, at least Phoebe turned out okay, right?
I hope so. I don't know. She really keeps me on the outside.
She's just an awkward, nerdy kid, but she's awesome. I think she's great. I think you're great. You're a great mom. Yeah, you showed up. You win.
I just wish he'd relax, just get into some trouble.
Hey, there's plenty of time for that. Who knows? Maybe she'll take up pole dancing.
Oh, she's not very coordinated.
Oh, I don't think that matters.
Phoebes?
Hey everyone, thanks for watching our show today. We just wanted to take some time to give a special shout out to our collaborator, Cat and Raven Design. They are a small queer-owned business that specializes in LGBTQ plus pride soaps. They have great designs, some that even look good to eat, but don't. You can get 10% off your entire order if you use the code DSP or go to our link tree. Help support this great small business and help give back to a great community. And we're back.
We're back again. We're back and we're live. I messed up the voice. After about 7 Tums and a can of Pepto, I'm feeling good. Feeling really good.
Okay, moving on.
That's it.
Great. All right, thank you for that. Appreciate it. Move on from that. All right. So before we get into the movie, Carolyn, I would love to know, how did you start your podcast, and how'd you start getting into neurodiversity?
Sure. So I started my podcast, Beyond 6 Seconds, in 2018, and it was not focused on neurodiversity or neurodivergence or autism at that time. It was just a general interview show. And there were many reasons why I started it, but the one reason that's interesting to me thinking back is that I really wanted to practice having conversations with people that I didn't know, because I felt that this was an area that I needed to get better at. And at that time, of course, I thought, well, I'm very introverted. I am very shy, which is true. But, I feel like I just don't know how to make the small talk or keep a conversation going unless the other person is sort of talking. But I'm like, let me get on the other side. I can interview people. I'll start out interviewing my friends, people that I know, who I know are doing interesting things. So I talked to people who were starting their own businesses or had a passion project or a cool hobby, who were doing interesting volunteer work. And the podcast just grew at that time. I was surprised that after a couple episodes, I started getting a lot of people referring me to meet other people who might want to be on the show, and a lot of people expressing interest. So I just kept doing this show, and in part to have a creative outlet and to get better at having these conversations. And then, as part of as the years go on, I'm always looking for guests with interesting stories, and I am on social media a lot, which is where I find a lot of my guests. And I wound up connecting with a lot of people in the autistic community, in the disability community, and hearing their stories. And specifically, I did interview a couple of autistic people before the show became about neurodivergence, but I did interview one autistic person in particular, and really got into sort of what not just what autism looked like or what I had been told it was growing up in the 80s and 90s. I think a lot of us remember how times have changed, fortunately, in terms of our views of autism then versus now. They're much less narrow and restrictive and rigid now. And it was the first time I got to hear what it was like to be autistic and what that experience felt like personally for someone. So in terms of, the sensory sensitivities, the difficulty with, ranging from not being able to make friends at all to just really struggling in relationships and friendships in terms of, it just didn't come easy, where it seemed to come easy for most other people, very basic things in terms of friendships and relationships. And routines, of course, really needing routine, valuing routine. Those are sort of the major diagnostic criteria, I suppose, of autism. So I got to hear what it felt like. And I said, I'm really connected with this person and with other autistic people that I wound up meeting and bonding with online and talking with on the show. And two, this sounds so familiar from my upbringing. So obviously growing up in the 80s and 90s, I would never, based on the criteria of autism back then, never would have gotten diagnosed with, I guess, I don't even know. It might have been called childhood schizophrenia at that time. It was a very long time ago that I was a small child. But, the things have changed so much. But learning about it from, especially how it feels I also found an article that wrote about how it feels often how women or cisgender women experience the feeling of autism. And it was saying things like, people will say you're very intense or you're very sort of like focused. And these words that had all been used to describe me growing up were like, oh, okay, that's interesting. Never really thought about that. So the combination of just really feeling bonded specifically to the experiences of the autistic adults that I was meeting, breaking a lot of stereotypes and misconceptions that I had about what autism was, and realizing and looking back on my own childhood and teenagehood and young adulthood in terms of, the building friendships really started getting me thinking like, well, maybe this is something that is something that pertains to me. I could possibly be autistic myself. So I wound up looking into a diagnosis at the end of 2021 and wound up getting diagnosed with autism. And that's a pretty, if anyone's gone through that process, late diagnosed, it's several hours. So it is a lengthy process. And a lot of it does look back at your childhood. So I know a lot of times people say like, oh, that so many people are realizing they're autistic now. It's like, well, yeah, but it's things that's been present for your whole life. So it really makes you look back on your childhood, the experiences that you had in terms of, what you were like when you were really young. And apparently I was a hand flapper. I found out later after the whole diagnosis criteria that that my mother had gotten me to try to get me assessed with one of the top experts on Tourette syndrome in our area because she thought that my hand flapping could be a tic. And I did not get that diagnosis, thankfully, because I don't have Tourette's, so didn't apply. But looking back, I'm like, oh, yes, okay. So that, at least that's an early indication and slightly validating as a late diagnosed autistic that there was something then that nobody understood at the time. I don't blame anyone for not understanding, but that was kind of interesting. So, yeah, I mean, I can get into more of my personal experiences or, and anything related to that. But anyway, I guess to answer the end of the question about the podcast, so I changed the focus of the podcast to neurodivergence in the beginning of 2022 because I just wanted to hear people's stories. I'm not an expert in autism or in neurodiversity or in really much of anything mental health wise, but I do love hearing people's stories and learning from people who have actually experienced things themselves. Because everything I realized I had learned about autism came from someone who is, a professor or an expert or a family member or a parent, but never from someone who is autistic themselves. So I wanted those stories out there. And so probably about half my guests are autistic and the other half are neurodivergent in other ways like dyslexic or ADHD or I've talked to people who are plural, who have dissociative identity disorder. I have an episode coming up with someone who has schizophrenia. I'm just interested in all these different stories and experiences. And it's interesting to see a lot of the things, some of the things we have in common and some of the things that make us different as well.
There you go. So I'm going to make one joke, and it is a joke.
Okay.
But, they got diagnosed, after COVID. So I assume you was normal, and then you got the COVID shot, and then now you're autistic.
I'm trying to think of the timing. Do we have shots then?
Yeah, we may have had shots by 2021.
We did by 2021? I don't remember. I have no concept of time anymore after COVID.
That's the vaccine.
The timeline is just a mess. So,
complete sarcasm. Anyone listening, vaccines do not cause autism. I'm just being very clear with that.
So in community, sometimes we joke about that, but I do always worry a little bit that people
100%.
take it and run away with it. I'm like, no, that's a joke.
It's a joke.
It's a joke.
Or is it?
Or is it? Yeah, real quick. What age were you at the diagnosis?
I was 44.
44?
Almost 45, yeah.
There you go. I'm going to kick it back to Spence for any questions or pivots.
Yeah. And then what kind of made you want to actually take the test? Was there anything like in your life that you were just like, I think I should do this?
Like it's time. Like there must have been like a point where you're like, there's too many autistic people I relate to. I assume it's something like that.
I mean, it kind of was like that. And at the time I was also like having some personal struggles related. Some of it was related to some things going on, like in my working life and other personal life. So I was definitely feeling like I was struggling, but I didn't really know why exactly. And I don't even know. I couldn't even explain. It's not like the autism diagnosis like explains like, oh, this is, your whole life explained. Like it does a little bit with that, but it's almost like the diagnosis is just the beginning. It's like, okay, so I have this information about myself. Like, so what do I do with it? Because as probably a lot of like diagnosed autistic adults know, there's not a whole lot of support, at least not in the United States, for someone who gets that late diagnosis as an adult. Most of the supports are for children. So a lot of it you have to kind of honestly find and discover yourself. So whether that's going into therapy or just taking care of your sensory needs. And sometimes it's just really trying to listen to yourself. And this sounds so basic, but literally some of us are masking so hard. And by masking, I mean like autistic masking, not like literal masking. I always have to say that in these days. But so that we don't even realize, like, because people have been told us like, oh, it's not that bad. Like you're fine. Like, but so it's that constant draw of like, things are hard for you, but no one really believes it. So because it's fine for everybody else, that you have to sort of undo all that and be like, you know what? If I'm going to a loud place, I don't have to just sit there and get irritated and get like upset because I'm getting overloaded with the noise. I can like buy earplugs. I can step outside. I don't have to go to that place anymore. Like these are things it's like, oh, right, I can do this. I'm an adult. Like,
Yeah.
But sometimes when you grow up a little different and people kind of don't always recognize your reality, this is like a learning process. So that kind of kicked off after the diagnosis and still continues.
There you go. The Spence, I mean, that was a great question because there's so many different things about being late diagnosed and it's difficult. Also, Carolyn, like, there's not a lot of services. And to find a therapist, I've had other therapists, Spence, hit me up, but you've seen the DMs. Like, where the hell's a therapist in my community that understands neurodivergence or autism? And I'm like, oh, shit, let me look. And then I'll reach out to my networks and I'll find some. It's really tough because you're going to get a lot of neurodivergent folks that'll end up with neurotypical therapists. And there'll be some wrong diagnosing or some not supporting. There'll be some ways in which medication or diet, exercise, right, that's not technically the best for that individual.
Yeah.
And then the person still continues to mask because they don't want to say that the doctor's wrong because they believe the doctor. And so they can't advocate for themselves. And so they end up getting put in a bad position to not get the actual real affirming care that they need. And then you'll get clients that finally like get a therapist like me and they're like, holy shit, this is awesome. And I'm like, it is? I mean, it was good.
Oh.
I'm sorry.
Yeah.
I just get
Naz,
excited.
I mean, yeah. And Naz, you can even tell me as a therapist, I feel like the majority of therapists don't really get any kind of education about what autism or ADHD is, or maybe it's like an elective or they get a couple hours. So then they're talking with someone and their client doesn't match their idea of what an autistic person should be. So they're like, I don't know, this isn't right.
You get like, I'm gonna be real with you. You might get like a couple paragraphs in a chapter about autism. Yeah. At least in the social work field, it's not much. So it's in one class, you'll have a couple pages of neurodevelopmental stuff. And that's about it. So you get no training. You barely get any clients or interactions or none of the case studies are built on like any developmental stuff, any like reading, dyslexia. None of it's on that. It's just anxiety, depression. Maybe you'll throw in some bipolar, but you don't get much training on those things. And so then you get thrown into the field like I did. And I was like, what the? I looked at my boss at St. Mary's. I said, oh, my kids are autistic. And so I started an autism group. And the next thing you know, 10 years later, now I'm a specialist. Mm-hmm. And then throughout that journey, I'm like, I think I'm autistic too. My first boss was like, nah, no, you're not. You just have too many autistic clients. And so you're just starting to feel like them through their stories. I'm like, no, I'm pretty sure I'm autistic. And then I met Spencer and we started this pod. I'm like, bro, you're autistic as shit too. And then I was like, all my friends are, family members are, right? It just all starts to make sense when you get older and you get away from that ableist type of thing.
I love how you bring out me, and I'm like, your longtime friend Colin. It's like,
yeah, well, I knew he was always, special. I didn't realize he was autistic.
he was something. I didn't know what it was. He was something.
My friend is very mute, just does not talk much at all. And fantastic in a lot of ways.
Yeah.
So here's a funny autism story, and then we're gonna pivot back to Spence for questions. Dad was like, "Yeah, man, my stomach been hurting." I said, "Why is your stomach hurting?" He said, "I ate those 2 bags of Smarties." I said, "What do you mean? They came in like 5-pound bags." He's like, "Yeah, I ate those in like a couple days." It's like,
Lord.
fuck. I'm like, but you don't have autism, huh?
Jesus Christ. I can't wait for him to hear this and be like, "That's not true.
That's not true.
I didn't eat both of them."
He's like, "The bad ones are horrible, but the good ones make me eat the bad ones." And I was like, "Shut the fuck up."
Saving me.
Oh, it's fantastic. Love Pops. Let's pivot back into Spencer's questions.
Sure. All right. So, we'd love to know, do you have any activities, whether it's watching certain shows or, knitting something, I don't know, that helps calm yourself during like certain emotions that you're going through?
Oh gosh.
Regulate.
Yeah. I mean, so in terms of shows, I'm a big fan of like game shows.
Okay.
So 2 of my favorite shows are the current iterations of Let's Make a Deal, hosted by Wayne Brady, and The Price is Right, which are back to back in my time zone.
Drew Carey.
So Drew Carey, Wayne Brady. So I don't know. That's sort of how I decompress at the end of the day, like especially if I've had a rough day, just like lie down and watch those, because now on Pluto TV, there's actually channels devoted. They just run 24/7, like old episodes of that. So, it doesn't matter because I don't always remember like the episode from 10 or 15 years ago, but that's something that really helps sort of.
That's a new one.
It's entertaining. It's regulating. It's kind of how I, some people relax and have like, a glass of wine or something. I just like watch game show reruns. I don't know. Like it works. It's like, that's how I, sort of calm down at the end of the day. So that's, I guess, something kind of unusual.
I actually feel that because I've been, so on YouTube, they do like 3-hour compilations of like Judge Judy episodes. I just watch Judge Judy. I don't know what I just like watching Judge Judy.
I used to love that show.
She's great. She's great. Yeah. So that's why I do a lot now too. I just put that on and I just watch it.
Yeah.
So I feel you.
Spencer loves a strong woman. A strong woman.
A strong little Jewish woman.
Is she Jewish?
Love 'em.
What?
Yeah, it's hilarious. Game shows, man. I don't know. I think, there's a couple here and there that you like and you fall in love with. I'm gonna be real though. Every time I go get my car fixed though, Price is Right is on. And like you get sucked into that fucking Price is Right. You'll get sucked in.
True.
You be trying to guess shit, right? And like, oh, I know how much groceries cost,
$20. Damn it.
I don't know shit.
I said 150. I'm only
Oh yeah, I'm not even like good at the games, but it's just so entertaining to watch people like I didn't know it cost that much, or like, why are these things being priced? Nobody buys these things. They're so like obscure.
Facts.
No one knows how much they cost.
Carolyn, you're gonna have to try and get on the show. Have you ever gone to a show?
No, I haven't.
It's
funny.
Cool.
I like watching, but I feel like I would be really bad playing. I think I would just be like so nervous.
Oh,
you could be in the audience, maybe.
I would totally be in the audience and be like totally happy with not being called up.
Bucket list. We're gonna tag. Spencer's gonna try and get this real. We're gonna tag Drew Carey and the people at Price is Right.
Yeah. No, that's awesome. Because I see people, especially on Let's Make a Deal, where they have time to like, tell me about yourself. It's like 1 or 2. And there's so many people like, hi, I'm a mother and I have 2 kids and my 1 kid has autism. And I'm like, why are you announcing this like on show? And 2, like, why aren't there any autistic people on this show? I'm sure there are, but they're not like announcing.
No.
And that's another thing about the stigma. It's okay apparently to like talk about your kid's diagnosis on national television, but no one discloses on their own.
No,
so,
they don't.
And this is filmed during the day, so what the hell? Where are your kids at? What's happening here?
I don't know.
What-
Oh yeah. No.
Questions,
Yeah.
CBS, hello?
Well, you don't want to see some autism, you turn on Jeopardy. Ain't not one
Yeah.
motherfucker on there not autistic. You just look at him, I can smell it on you, boy.
They just have so much knowledge and information about subjects.
About everything,
Like,
right? I mean, it's the encyclopedias up there. Actually, one person won the most consecutive times in history. Was a librarian from Purdue,
oh,
from my
well, there you
university. Yeah.
go.
Nice. I was like, look at that. It was crazy. Everyone was hyping them up. It's pretty cool.
Yeah.
When Spencer asked this, I'm going to start pivoting this real quick. Are there any things that help you regulate just in general, outside of like shows, just anything in general that helps you like chillax and calm? I'm starting to run into that more and more as I'm starting my private practice. And I want to see what other people say now during the show. So what are your go-tos to get you to relax or regulate? It could be anything in the world, or maybe it is just the shows.
Yeah. I mean, the shows are nice for decompressing at the end of the day. During the day, because I work from home remotely, I always like to have like a hot drink. So usually I make tea.
Okay.
Coffee is good, but sometimes it makes me like a little jumpy if I have too much of it. But tea, I can almost drink like, I have one tea like in the morning, and then after lunch I make like another tea, and it's just soothing to have like the hot beverage. And it also helps me remember to like drink some sort of like and hydrate during the day, because I'll like totally forget to drink anything like if I don't have it like right there. So sort of having the hot drink is sort of enticing, and it's comforting to just sort of, I don't know, it just feels good. So I always look forward to having something like that to kind of help me get through the day. And, after I got the diagnosis, I really started checking into like, I'm very fidgety with my hands. So I'm always looking at like different types of like fidget items and things. So I have but there are only certain ones that I like. So I think everybody has their own personal preference in terms of, what is regulating for them. So like right now, I don't know if I can show it on Zoom.
Yeah.
So this is what I'm holding while I'm talking to you guys. It's like this little ring.
A little
It's
donut.
like, it's a little donut. It's like hard rubber, and it has like little, you can't see, it has like little spiky things. So it's like textured, and I don't know, at a minimum, it's like a good grip hand exerciser. So like I literally, when I'm recording podcasts where I'm interviewing people, and when I'm being interviewed, if I'm on the computer like this and I don't have to type, I'll usually hold something like this in my hand. That's quiet, so it doesn't get picked up on the mic, but gives me something to do with my hands besides like, mess up my cuticles or whatever. So it helps with that.
I got this new phone case.
Yeah.
That's got all these scales on it. Can you see? The
That's
scales?
nice. Yeah. Mm-hmm.
Yeah, it just
and the hand grip is good too. That's awesome.
But yeah, Spencer's over there getting an exercise in Burning County.
Yeah, that's serious.
That's the real stuff.
hand
Yeah.
exercises.
It's called Death Grip.
Jesus.
That's right. I'm gonna have the manliest hands out there.
That's serious exercise.
What you gonna do with them hands, boy?
Don't worry about it. Don't you worry about it.
Don't ask questions.
All I'm gonna say is it's gonna be fast. It's gonna be smooth. That's all I'm gonna say.
It's gonna be good. Oh my God. All right, we're gonna pivot now.
And pivot.
What else you got, Spence?
Yeah. So I'd love to know also. I mean, you talked about it a little bit, but would love to know. So we're going to talk about it a little bit later too. Did you have any did you feel like you could relate to one of the main protagonists, Phoebe, who is coded in autism, where they had a hard time kind of connecting with people in general, or were you kind of good at masking and putting that on for other people?
Yeah, I was pretty good at masking. So I think Phoebe is like sort of an extreme example. But I was also, in school, I was identified and went through in the gifted program. So I kind of related that piece as well. And now in my age, I'm finding out that a lot of people who went through the gifted program in the 90s were probably also neurodivergent. I don't know what it's like today. I have not been part of the school system in a while, but certainly a lot of us in that program, that was the only way, there was only special education and gifted program, which is sort of a form of special education, but okay. So I did relate to the character Phoebe in that way, in terms of having this interest and relating much better to adults than to other children. My age, I was always the one just trying to talk up the adults. But again, I just put that, like, I'm an only child, so I figured, like, well, of course I relate to adults. I didn't grow up around kids. I kind of had to relate to adults, so I sort of dismissed that piece. But often that's a part of autism as well. So I always felt like, I don't know, that I was like a sort of a different age than I was. I always felt like I was very old when I was younger, and now I feel like I'm much younger than I really am. It's kind of weird how that happens developmentally.
See, white people get to
yeah.
choose whatever they want these days, Spence. I tell you, white people are just so lucky, man. I'm joking.
They're the luckiest.
They're the luckiest people. You're 12, you're 57. Just pick an age. I'm joking. Completely joking right now. I'm sorry, I'm an asshole.
It's so bizarre.
I'm real quick. I'm gonna let you get back to you. So I'm perpetually like young, but unless I mask to be like legit professional, perpetually always young, perpetually just an idiot, like a 7-year-old. I feel like I've been stuck in the second grade mentality my whole life.
Good.
Yeah, it's very good for life. That sarcasm is not
Doctor.
actually good. Yeah,
Doctor.
good morning, doctor. Do you
Yes.
want to look at Ninja Turtles for the rest of the hour? Okay.
Yeah.
Carolyn, let's get back into something. So what about like when you were like in high school, kind of like we talked about in pre-production? So how were you like with friends? Because you talked about some stuff when you're friends, but you're not friends. And then in college, and then you're a singer. You're showman.
Yeah. So the whole friend dynamic is interesting because, I did have friends growing up, and I'm going to tread carefully because I don't want to like insult anybody, my friends who might be listening. But so
She hated
I did
you
have.
all.
It's like everybody hates it. I don't want to come off as like everybody always hated me, because that's not true.
That's not true.
But I always felt like, I didn't always have the same like deep friend relationships that other people seem to cultivate very naturally. So, and this really came across most when I was in like a group of friends. So like if there were, maybe a group of 4 or like a larger group, and everybody was kind of friends and hanging out together and spent time together, like, yeah, everyone was very nice, and we were chatty, but I always felt like there was almost like a kind of an invisible wall between me and other people. Like I couldn't quite, make the connection to be like, the best friend, or like, it's kind of hard to explain. It became much more pronounced like in college. So, in high school, I had, a sort of a small core friend group. But, sort of as soon as I graduated from college, like a few years out from high school, like a lot of those friendships kind of like dissolved very quickly as people moved on. Not all, but probably most. Then in college, I started doing the same thing, hanging out with a big group of people, but realizing like, it's nice. Everyone's very accepting. They include me, but I'm not like deeply friends with anyone. And I just didn't know how to make those connections. I didn't know like, again, how to start that conversation, throwing back to like me starting the podcast to get better at that. Like, I just kind of felt like I couldn't connect in the same way that everybody else in the group seemed to be connecting with each other. So I kind of wound up in that case in college, splitting away from the group in a little while, because I was trying to find like more meaningful friendships. And it was really hard. There was a long time that I really didn't have any friendships that were very close, or there were some that were close that I definitely get the sense that people were just hanging out with me to like be nice to me, or they felt sorry for me, but they really would prefer not to hang out with me as much. So that was not really something that I realized until much later. So yeah, it was kind of challenging. And I think that's why a lot of times autism gets missed in girls and in women, is because, many times we do have friends. Like, there's always someone who's not as educated and just assumes that if you're autistic, you don't have any friends. But that's not true at all. And probably some of my friends were probably neurodivergent themselves. So that is helpful sometimes in making friends. But yeah, so I didn't realize looking back that a lot of those challenges were just, I thought it was friends, and I'm not blaming other people. Like I recognized it in myself. It's like, I just didn't know. I didn't know how to have those conversations. I didn't know like what to do. Like I was just sort of myself and trying to like go along. And then I also, realized a lot of times I was going along with things that maybe I wasn't really interested in, but I'm like,
Yeah.
well, if I'm going to have friends and be in this group, I
gotta do
better,
this.
do this.
Yeah.
It wasn't anything like criminal, but it was just like stuff I really wasn't
Well,
interested
hey,
in.
now we know we don't. We're not. Let's not knock the criminals,
Oh.
Caroline. Let's not knock the criminals.
Let's
I mean,
not
who
knock
has
the
it?
criminals.
Who is
It's
it?
not part of my identity.
Well, I mean, who is this? Oh, here we go. It's not part of your identity.
Who hasn't stabbed somebody willingly?
What do you
come
mean,
on.
you people, Caroline? What do you mean, you people?
Oh, Jesus Christ.
It's just not part of
JK.
my.
I'm joking.
Do not identify.
I mean, who hasn't done a little crack? I mean,
Oh, God. In school.
I'm sorry. I'm sorry. That
I
was
think that the Smarties were the closest that we
There you go. There
I'll let
you
my
go.
dad know.
Yeah.
He's got a hiding
get-
stash.
Those get addicting. Let's be honest.
They are.
Smarties
There's
get
something
addicting.
about the Smarties.
Bro,
Yeah,
he got
for
these
sure.
big old bags, though.
Yeah.
Hey.
Is what
That's
it
what
is.
I'm glad we didn't have the big old bags because that would have been trouble.
No.
Yeah. We just had the
Oh my
little
God.
like sleeves.
I'm sorry to derail us. That was
Yeah.
funny as shit.
Oh, but also to say, so yes, you're right. I am also a singer. So other friend
Oh, yeah,
groups I
there
was
you go.
in college and after was, part of singing groups. I was in small groups. And again, everybody, very friendly, good relation, everyone was good to me. But at the same time, it's like I just wasn't making those relationships. And I was trying different things, like, especially as like, me like the gifted student, like, oh, I can always do all these things. And I'm, sometimes you feel like a lot of your value is like the stuff you can do
Yep.
like for other people or like
Yep.
your performance, like you're always performing.
Yep.
And ironically, as a singer, you're also performing. So it's like, if I do all these things for people, then they'll like me, then they'll be my friend, and then they'll help me out. And it's like, no, they just take you for granted, honestly, is what happens. So I have to get better at like sharing what I need, and I maybe be a little less helpful. I don't know. These are things that go through my head post-diagnosis. Is like, how do I rethink how I show up in the world? Like, I always think of myself as wanting to be helpful, but maybe I'd be less helpful because I don't think it's working out. I don't know. It's very confusing.
So I actually have a question real quick about your singing. Were you nervous a lot of the time when you were singing? Or like I've heard a lot of people who are
Yep.
not great at communicating
Mhm.
with others, like just talking, but they can perform because they're putting on that mask,
Mhm.
right? And they're able to do it because it's just a whole different mentality that they have. Did you have that experience where like you felt like you weren't nervous because this is something that you're doing because you're not really talking to anybody, you're talking to a lot of people, or were you nervous when you did it?
I mean, there's always that aspect of stage fright that a lot of us get going on, but like beyond that, no, it's performing and singing is like 1,000 times easier than having a conversation at a networking event, for sure.
Yeah.
And part of it is because sometimes you're masking, you're in performance mode. It's like, okay, I'm on stage and like, okay, it's time, you're and it's also for me scripted. So I've learned my music beforehand, or I know my lines, or I know my part. We've already talked through like how the choreography is going to go and which songs are, when. The hardest part for me, like when I was singing in my a cappella group, when we do a gig, like in some, dive bar, like and any random place, the hardest part for me is like, how am I going to get on stage? Where am I going to stand? How am I going to get off stage? How am I going to do these transitions? Because that was the part that was not rehearsed, and that does not come easily for me. Because everyone's like, just like get on the stage. It's like, how? I don't know. Like, are those the stairs? Do I go this way? Ironically, there's this clip from The Price is Right of this poor woman who, after spinning the wheel at the Showcase Showdown, usually, like if you don't get the highest score, they send you off. And she's just trying to get off the stage. She's looking for the way out and she can't. And it's funny, but it's like, oh my God, that's so relatable. That would be me, not knowing how the hell to get off camera, to get off the stage and just like end this moment. Like, I'm like,
Bruh.
so like silly things like that. Like I'm like, I don't think regular people or most people don't think about this stuff when they're performing. They worry about the actual performing.
Yes.
But I don't, because I'm prepared. I script, so it's good.
You script. Hey, funny story, real quick. I graduated my master's, right? And I go up And I guess I really didn't pay attention where people were walking off stage. So I walk, and I go, my professor gives me a big old hug and she gives me a big old kiss on the cheek because that's just who she is. I'm like, oh, damn. And it was crazy. I was so happy and excited. I couldn't believe that she stood up because she just had surgery on her foot. I'm like crying because it's highly emotional. And then I walk right off the middle of the stage. And everyone, when I got back to my chair, they're like, Naz, are you drunk? Like, what the fuck did you just do? I was supposed to exit all the way on the other side of the stage. You walk from one end all the way over. I walked, stopped in the middle, hugged my professor, walked right off the middle of the stage.
Oh.
Thank God there were stairs. Jesus Christ.
Yeah, I was like, did you fall or did you jump?
I don't even remember. I might have jumped.
Oh my God.
I might have jumped.
So excited.
I was so excited. I'm like, you can't take this back, you fuckers.
That's right. We got that on camera.
Yeah, my dad's like, run. It was just wild, man. So you're right. I have some of the same stuff where I have to script like where we're going to be. And as soon as I do that, the first couple of days of class or a new place or a new doctor or whatever, the next time I'm perfect. But that first time, hella anxious the whole time because I don't know any of the stuff. I can't script it or prompt it, or I'm not primed for what I'm about to see or experience unless it brings anxiety. Thank you for sharing that because a lot of people will relate to that. We haven't really talked about that a lot.
Yeah. Sure.
Yeah.
Want to pivot to the show?
Let's do it. All right. So, Ghostbusters Afterlife. This is a direct sequel to Ghostbusters 2, which was in like 1989, 87, something like that. There was a movie called Ghostbusters in 2015 by the guy who made Knocked Up. I'm forgetting his name right now. And it didn't do well. It wasn't like directly a sequel or anything like that. It was kind of, its own thing. But we finally got this sequel, especially after Harold Ramis, who was the writer / Egon in the originals. We finally got a nice little tribute to him because there hadn't been any films before that where they could actually do it. And so this follows the daughter and granddaughter or grandkids, because it's both daughter and son in the movies. And because he dies in the movie, they're there at his house, just trying to figure out like what the hell is going on here. And so Phoebe, she actually goes to one of the schools because they moved there, and she meets Gary, or Mr. Gruberson, and she's talking with him, and he's a seismologist.
Hey, I love a good seismologist. I like that size.
I knew that was coming.
I like them
it.
thick.
I knew it. And if you don't know, folks, that is the study of earthquakes.
Oh,
so
well,
nothing naughty there. And so they're having this conversation, and she's trying to tell jokes, but they're not landing the way that she wants them to. As we, kind of have this autism child who has more a little bit of dry humor sometimes. Sometimes you get the dry humor, and that's okay. But I would love to ask, so Carolyn, did you ever have somebody who saw that maybe you were different, but they also appreciated that part of you and actually wanted to have those kind of fun conversations to kind of get you even more into your mode than you realized before, more than anybody else? Have you had anybody like that in your life before?
Yeah, I mean, I think I've been really fortunate that I have had, probably more adults growing up and certainly like peers now who have been interested in the types of things that really interest me. So I don't have a lot of memories of being shut down for talking about something that people didn't really want to hear about. My issue was more that I just didn't talk really at all in group conversations. So but and obviously as a podcaster, I mean, that's prime for, there are some like podcasters want to talk about podcasting like almost all the time. So that's really awesome. Like I could, people are interested if they don't podcast, they want to hear about it. And people who do podcast want to talk about it because they either, want to talk about the technical part or what it's like or learn about your shows. So, so I'm definitely finding much more of an appreciation probably at this point in my life, maybe even than before.
Okay.
Nice.
Yeah.
Yeah.
This scene. So when it comes to this humor thing, you can go ahead and describe it or like why you wanted to do this scene, but specifically, why did you want to touch on that humor bit? Because that's hilarious. And then I can add a little bit about the humor too. So why'd you bring up the humor bit on this scene?
So the humor bit, well, one, it's an interesting theme throughout this whole movie because in an earlier scene, before the scene we're discussing with, before that happens, Phoebe has this joke book of, I guess, what we would call dad jokes. They're like corny jokes that she's practicing because in order to be able to make friends. And, as an autistic person, this is a very familiar concept to me. Maybe not with jokes, but with like other things in terms of like, how do I make friends? Let me try to be like charming and bond with people by telling these jokes. And she's telling them to her family and they're just like, oh, that's terrible. But she's memorizing them because she's like, okay, I'm going to use this. And they wind up at the end of the movie, I won't spoil it, but it winds up being very important to her becoming the hero of the movie. But at this scene here, this is the first time that she's telling the joke to someone and it essentially lands. It does help with this relationship that she's trying to build with Gary as she's having this conversation. The humor part, again, just sort of seems like a type of masking, seems like a type of scripting. And I thought it was something that's common in the autistic experience. Again, not jokes specifically, but the whole concept of like scripting and masking in order to, make friends or build relationships more easily. So this scene was a really interesting sort of a summary or description of that particularly going on in a case where it's the first time I think that that's ever worked for her, where she's told this corny joke and the person she talks to, Gary, really appreciates what she's doing because he also sees her and values her expertise and sees her for, the cool person that she is.
So real quick, me and Spence, what's your version of this, Spence? Do you have like a version of this where you tried to do something to like make sure you fit in? Because I can know when I was younger, it was probably a million things. Like I know I tried to skateboard and roller skate and the tech decks, sucked at those, right? I mean,
yeah, those things. I don't know how people do it. They're like, oh yeah, I'm doing this so easy. It was like,
I remember
I can't do it.
No, I did. I was actually good at origami though, so I was good at that.
Oh, there you go. Yeah, was not good at that. I guess for me, it was probably sports. Like basketball and football, stuff like that. But then it was also just trying to be funny. I was also just trying to get attention, especially back in the high school, middle school days, just wanted attention.
Yeah.
And so, yeah, all I wanted was love. But no, I think it's more of like, yeah, I did use a lot of humor to try to get people to like,
laugh.
Yeah, laugh and stuff. But then sometimes it'd be so stupid. Like I'd say a joke, silence. Somebody would say the same joke, laugh throughout the whole class, and I'm just like, okay, well, I'm just gonna leave. I'm gonna not be in school anymore. But yeah, so I think it was more like the humor and just trying to connect with people with sports because I wasn't really good with conversations either.
Okay.
I wasn't really good with like one-on-one talk, or I was better with one-on-one talking, was not good at group talks. Like I can speak to you privately and I'm fine. But then once we start getting to groups, then I start being like, oh, because then I have to like try to nitpick on the conversation, try to be good at talking at all subjects with this person, that person, and try to adapt to each conversation and each person that I'm talking to. So I can either make them laugh or I can make them seem like I'm interesting to each one of those people.
Enough.
And that's a very tough thing to do, obviously. So
yeah. And I have the same issue with like group conversations, but for me, it's like like, when is my turn? Like, because like I noticed people are like interrupting each other and stuff, and this seems fine. But like when I try to interrupt, like people just talk over me or they get pissed. And I'm like, what am I doing wrong? Like, but then if I don't interrupt, I just stand there and they're like, why are you so quiet? It's like, when are you going to stop talking? Like, I have not figured that out yet. So, the group dynamic is tough.
Very tough. I got, so outright therapist now.
Okay.
In my group therapies, I'll have them. Supposedly, you don't always know what's in there if they're neurotypical, neurodivergent. But a good amount of time at campus, I always load them up with my clients. So if they're loaded up with my clients, the group at the school, then it's probably going to be a more neurodivergent, autistic group. Doesn't matter what the other identities are and why they're in there. And so I'll get a couple quiet ones in there. And the same thing is always with the quiet folks is, I don't know when the hell to say anything. Like, they're like, there's a million fucking things going on. They're like, I don't want to be disrespectful. Like, I don't want to hurt anyone. And so they withhold. And so the only way is to give them the microphone, technically, to prompt them or to give them questions. Sometimes it's about finding those intersections and making sure like everyone has trust. So that way everything is done in good faith. And then I got my other autistics that are in there that don't shut up. And it's not garbage that they're saying. It's great, affirming, wonderful stuff. But then they go too much into the detail and repetitive because they're used to not being understood. And so to stop themselves from being misunderstood, they overtalk. And then it's up to me to rail. But that's a good thing about group therapy is it's up to the therapist to rein people in, to get them to hush a little bit, and then to bring in the quiet ones. There's literally a thing that's going on right now. And it's magnificent because all these knuckleheads Spence, because we're going to get this into the next scene. Special interest stuff. They all started nerding out about video games, Spence. I don't even know the shit they talking about. They talking about some shit. It ain't normal. This is autism video games. This ain't like Call of Duty type stuff.
Oh.
Like these
like
are
Roblox.
Yeah.
Minecraft.
But you know, they talked about League, and then one boy brought up League of Legends, but then he was like, no, that's the cheap stuff. The one, and then they started relating in this other weird game, which sounds fantastic. It was hilarious, but I could see some of the other folks in group like, the fuck is going on right now? And I'm like, I'm gonna give y'all another 2 minutes to geek out because I need the quiet one to relate to this other one, and then we're gonna get back to the conversation what we're supposed to have. We derail so much in my group therapy, Spence. Like at one point in time, I said Mega Squirtle instead of like Mega Blastoids instead of Mega Blastoids. And my boy was like, and then he starts making fun of me. He's like, "Who the hell is Mega Squirtle?" He's just like, it's like Squirtle.
Sounds like a medical condition.
Yeah, I'm sorry. You have Mega Squirtle.
Yep.
No.
It's a virus. And then he was like, and the way you said it now is just like a hood Squirtle. It's like, Mega Squirtle, bitch.
Now, y'all seen that Mega Squirtle? You know.
You know. And they just laughed.
Squirtle with a do-rag.
If he would have said that, I would have kicked him out because he's a white boy. But I was cracking up, bro. We were so derailed that group therapy ended up going over. I've learned this. When I start the private practice group therapy, like the private practice has started, group therapy for me can't be an hour and a half. Gotta be 2 hours. Hour and a half, I cannot. I need to make sure that everyone eats in there because I know what it's like when folks, you feel hushed or neglected. 2 hours, I feel like 90 minutes doesn't work. And at my place here, they only give us 90 minutes. But besides the point, love these talks. For me, I just realized what it was when I was very young, Spence, there was a bunch of people that would laugh every time I swore. And so I started swearing more and more and more to impress the older boys so that I would be in the in crowd. And then as you get older throughout school, it's like everyone treated each other horribly. Like you just teased each other, you made fun of each other. We would call it blazing or ripping each other, peeling or whatever you want to call it. And then I regret a lot of the things that I used to say now because I'm like, we would seriously hurt each other verbally. Talking about, their looks, their intelligence, their parents, right? Their clothing, their economics, their poor sports. They're too soft. I mean, Jesus Christ, but it's survival of the fittest. If you don't make fun of people, then they all make fun of you. And so earlier when you said, Carolyn, like, that's not one of my identities. Like I didn't want it to be my identity, but then we just assumed it. And then I just regret so many of the things that we used to say to maybe the people that could take it and that were dishing out the most trash talking. Okay. But then sometimes people caught like friendly fire and I'm just like, God damn it. Makes me feel like that podcast, Spencer, we just did, the Irredeemable from Spirited.
Yeah.
All right. Want to get into the second scene, Spence?
Yeah. So this is a scene with Gary and then Callie. And Callie, she is the daughter of Egon. And Egon pretty much devoted his life to just keep on finding ghosts, especially I'm trying I forgot the name of the first one where they beat it because it's the same one. Like they're trying he pretty much devoted his life to ghost busting still.
Yep.
And he moved away from his daughter. And so now she's felt that neglect all of her life because she thought like, hey, he didn't love her. And so now she does not like science. She doesn't like science talk, but she's with Gary now, who is a scientist and he works on science things. And so she's pretty much talking about how not only does she not like science, but then also that her father of her children didn't really get to connect with Phoebe because it felt like she was different in some way. And the fact like she is more connected to Egon because she has a similar personality to her grandfather. Maybe that's why, the mom maybe also feeling a little bit of a disconnect there also, and how she might not, want to feel attached to her daughter because she reminds herself too much of her father and things like that. So yeah, would love to know, Carolyn, why'd you want to pick this scene specifically to talk about?
Yeah, so this scene was very interesting to me in terms of how Callie, the mom, talked about her daughter Phoebe, because you actually get to hear, some insights into what's going through Callie's mind, and I think a lot of it is relatable for, some autistic people in the autistic experience. Because, as you said, Gary asks, like, sort of, what's the deal with your ex or with Phoebe's dad? And the first thing Callie says is like, well, she like, my ex was, he's like, I don't know, my ex was fine with Trevor, who's the older brother, but with Phoebe, just couldn't connect with her. And that's the only sort of explanation we get about like the relationship and like what happened with it. So it sort of toes the line. It doesn't quite go there, but it almost goes there and almost makes it sound like it's Phoebe's fault that their relationship ended, like that she's isolated from her father, that her father left, which, when I was watching it, that's how it struck me when I watched the scene the first time. So I just thought that was really kind of devastating to hear a parent say that about their child and the end of their relationship. Now, granted, her, the mother doesn't really like her ex. That comes out later in the scene and just did not think well of him at all. So that was really the most striking part about this particular scene, is that you get to hear what Callie is talking about. And then there's some other things that come up in the scene about Phoebe saying, well, or Callie saying, well, Phoebe really keeps me on the outside, like I can't connect with her. She's like, I wish she'd get into some kind of trouble, which again is foreshadowing because yes, they do get into some kind of trouble in this movie. And then Gary jokes, because Gary is like the humor, the comic relief of the movie. He's like, well, maybe she'll take up pole dancing. And Callie's sort of dry, sarcastic joke immediately is, well, she's not very coordinated. Which again, a lot of autistic people like me are not very coordinated. So I'm like, oh, that's interesting that was your immediate go-to for that.
Also, how literal. That's very literal too. That
yes, yeah, it's interesting the similarity of Phoebe telling these like pun sort of dad jokes that don't land, and then Callie's like very sarcastic, but she's not doing it to to build relationships. She's doing it because that's just who she is.
Correct.
And she's angry. So I think a lot of her humor is kind of like sarcastic and cynical and angry and like, So, but it's interesting. Mother and daughter have that humor piece in common in a strange way, but they don't realize it. They just don't see eye to eye because of that trauma that Callie has had with, thinking that her father abandoned her. And then now she has this daughter who reminds her of the father who abandoned her. So it's interesting.
And you mentioned in the pre-production that she's having trouble connecting with her daughter as well. And so, right. And
Yes.
that is troubling too. And so you said, that's a dichotomy that happens quite often actually in these families is the parent can't connect with the kid, or the kid can't connect with the parent, or the parent doesn't find ways or just doesn't force themselves to connect with the kid on that special interest. Do you have anything you want to shed light on that?
Yeah. And because another thing that we don't see in the scene, but happens earlier in the movie between Callie and Phoebe is that, as Callie's like dropping her off at school, or sort of, so it's almost like she, saying like goodbye to someone. She says, she says to Phoebe, like, remember, like, don't be yourself. So it's not like, behave yourself or like, don't do this. It's like, be a different person so that you can just get along with people. Just please don't be who you are. So it's a full mask. Yeah, fully like behavior, personality, everything. So that is just, in the autistic experience is devastating to hear someone come out and say that like so directly. But I feel like, we have that pressure a lot of times as autistic people to not be ourselves when we're trying to get on in groups of people or find relationships or be in our friendships.
Yep.
So yeah, that was another thing that was interesting about this scene.
Very. What was interesting to me is the very beginning, Spence. So it reminds me about my dates, like when they'll just open up and I'm just special, just dumping on things. Well, I'm gonna tell you about the 700 clients I got and how much I love it. And I love helping the babies. I love the babies. And I'm gonna tell you why I love the babies. And then they're just like, nah, you literally didn't shut up the entire time. This is after they realized that I wasn't like a narcissist or an asshole. You asked me a question, so I'm excited. I'm gonna tell you about it. I met this random dude in Lowe's the other day. Because I'm not shy, it's not a sexual thing.
Sorry. Sorry.
It could have been. It depends. No, so I'm in Lowe's and I'm like, hey, what are you guys getting ready to, what's that shit called? Stain. I'm in this wood staining section because I got to do all this countertop stuff.
Mm-hmm.
That motherfucker ended up knowing every single thing about all the waxes. He showed me about 700 pictures on his phone. I'm like, I asked the right fucking guy. The guy from Lowe's from the paint department said, can I help you anything, sir? I said, no, homeboy got me. Yep.
Yeah.
And then I was like, is there anything else? And he's like, you need this, this, and this. And then you need to YouTube this. This the color. This the pre-stain. This is the after. I'm like, Jesus Christ. It would have took me hours, Spence. Hours in there.
Yeah.
I was in and out in like 10 minutes because I met this random dude. And it made me think afterwards, like sometime dude had to have been autistic. Like, just the way the conversation was going, it was not a neurotypical conversation. And it felt so good, because I know he felt good talking about it. And his partner's like, come on, man, we gotta go. And he's like, wait a minute. Like,
I got more to say here.
He's like, I'm helping this man out. And it was just magnificent because a lot of us that info dump are special interests. Some people don't want to hear it. But every once in a while, you will get people that just can't wait to hear it. I love when people info dump because it's probably a topic I don't know anything about. So to me, it's like free education. And also I know that maybe this doesn't matter now because it's like the dumbest thing in the world that they're telling me, but I might be able to use it at a different time for somebody else. And so I like to collect that data because now I have a good script or things to say to connect with another human. And so I love when people share things, but that's what that original scene reminded me of. Because he's like, am I boring you? Like, I can literally feel your yawn. And she's like, no, I'm fine. He's like, maybe you should take some Benadryl because she's like, you got allergies. She's like, oh, no, I'm just going to drink some whiskey. He's like, that's stronger than Benadryl. Yep. Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Serious.
He's like, how do you get to these conversations? Whiskey.
Alcoholism.
Hey, I mean, it's the only way to talk to an autistic person, right? To be drunk. That's sarcasm.
Okay.
Oh,
That's complete.
Oh,
I'm just therapy drunk. I say, oh, tell me your problems.
what's happening?
He pours into his bush light. Hey, random thing.
Yes.
We'll talk about this maybe in the next podcast. Spence, did you see that thing with Jason Kelsey?
Oh yeah, I did.
So people just think they can say anything disrespectful these days. It's wild, bro.
Yeah, that wasn't good.
Horrible.
That wasn't good at all.
Yeah. So some folks do better. I'm sorry I did a small pivot here. Don't just be saying horrific, homophobic things to people. Just some people, they're just sickening, man. You watch things like that and you're like, this is the world we live in sometimes, Spence.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's
We're not going to
unfortunate.
repeat it, but I was actually hoping he kicked his ass, that boy. I hope he gets kicked out of school. I hope Penn State kicks his ass out of school for saying those slurs.
Yeah, well, it's Pennsylvania, Philadelphia. They acted exactly how you would think, people in Philly be acted. So
All I know is they should kick that kid out of school.
They should.
All
They
right.
should.
Uh,
Anyways.
It's a random thing. You can Google it later. A famous football player is on TV shows, right? And then some kid starts calling him names and his brother names. And then he takes his cell phone.
He's dating Taylor Swift.
Yeah, and he takes his cell phone, throws it on the floor, and breaks his phone. I guarantee you that kid tries to sue the football player for this, but in actuality, that kid, for what he was saying, should be kicked out of school.
yeah.
People just think they can say anything. Spence, real quick, and then we'll get to the next thing. Have you ever had this special interest info dump thing? Like, and then people are like, "Shut up, bro," and you're just like, "Wait a minute," the green one is better.
I think I'm more on the side. Like sometimes I do when it's talking about like certain like shows or movies, stuff like that. Like I can info dump about Star Wars if people aren't interested, or if like they say like, or if they have like the same interest as me, and I can see that they are, then I can talk about it. But usually I like to listen
You're the listener.
to people.
Yep.
Yeah, I usually like listening to people, and I try not to like shame anybody while they're having like these kind of more like they're going on like these so-called like
Tangents.
rants and stuff like that, because it's just like, I mean, you're having fun talking, so what am I supposed to do? Just be like, I don't want to listen to this anymore. Like, no, I usually like to just listen and be like, oh, cool, learn something new today.
All right.
Yeah, cool. Yeah.
Have you had an experience where you shared like special interest and then they were just like, "Shut up," or they like walked away, or could you tell? Because it happens to me sometimes. I'm like, I need to shut up.
I don't know. Again, I tend not to talk. I'm on the other side.
So
So I'm just like so masked. I just like really don't even know half the conversation.
Okay.
No, I mean, again, fortunately, I think one of the things that helps with that is that I would find communities of people who had common interests to mine, and then you can
Bounce.
kind of talk about it all the time because everybody's interested.
Yep.
So hanging out with musicians, or hanging out with like the theater kids, or hanging out with the podcasters, or hanging out with like, a cappella singers, like we're all, we can all talk about the same type of stuff and not get tired of it. So I think that, again, helped with that a lot. But yeah, other than that, I was not really
Not as much
talking a whole lot
But
outside of those groups.
But the good thing is for folks that do want to info dump, find those groups like you talked about. Find those groups so that way that they're not getting burned out and everyone's benefiting.
Mhm.
Yep. All right.
Yeah.
Let's move it on down to the east side.
Yeah. Yep. That's where I went to.
Yeah.
No, he's up in the sky.
Yeah.
Right.
To the next scene.
All right. So now we're having this scene where Callie found like the device where they could detect ghosts, and seemingly it is Egon's ghost, guiding her down to like this the shed / basement, where Egon has actually been keeping track of Callie and her life in general, and has a whole photo wall of her. So now we're seeing that Egon was not just like this neglectful parent. He was he was keeping track of her, but he was doing so because he wanted to protect her and just the world in general. Because I found it was Zool, um, because Zool and Gozer were going to try to take over the world again, like they did try to do in the first one. And
Yes.
so, um, and so now we're having this kind of like heartwarming moment where she's actually finding this out that her dad did care. And although he did not communicate it directly, she finally gets to have a little bit of closure in that moment. She also gets to have a little bit of closure at the end of the film. Um, I'm just gonna spoil it. Like where Egon actually, his ghost actually does pop up, and so she kind of has that moment with him as well, which I thought was a great moment in the movie. Loved it. Tearjerker.
It was
For
good.
sure. Yeah.
Because didn't
but
he
yeah,
have his
so
he had his little ray gun too? He was helping too, wasn't he, in the spirit realm or no?
yes.
Yeah.
Yeah, he was actually.
Yeah,
He had his
everyone.
proton pack.
Yeah.
Bruh.
Yep.
I was hurting.
It was great. And then they're all just looking at him. You're just like, no,
Mhm.
I know, man.
Bill Murray, everybody.
I
Dan
know.
Aykroyd.
I'm telling you, man. Good
Yeah.
times.
And I actually got to meet Ernie Hudson. I actually got to meet him in person because he lives in Minnesota.
Okay.
He was a cool guy. Yeah.
Makes
Give me a wrong email. Couldn't contact him. But you know what? Hey, love you, Ernie. Looking great at like 67,
Hey.
something like that. He looks great. Not gonna lie to you.
Got
He
the
looks
thing.
fantastic. So
Yep.
yeah.
Seismologist.
All
sorry.
right. And so with this scene, I think it's talking about especially when we have trauma with our parents and we have a lack of communication, maybe on both sides, maybe on one, maybe the other, where, they're not telling us exactly how they feel about us. And so then we kind of hone in on that resentment and how we feel about them. And that keeps growing and growing until we don't even talk to them anymore because we think that they don't even have an interest in us. But sometimes when people pass away or later on in life, we find out that actually they did care a lot.
You learn.
It's just that they didn't have the words to say it or they couldn't be around for some reason. Um, and I think that was a great scene to show because sometimes we do have those moments.
I had that
I'm
moment.
gonna kick it. Did you? Oh,
Oh yeah, I'll let her talk. But yeah, no, I had that moment with my own mama. Yeah.
and so I'm a kid to Carolyn, but then I also want to say Tyler the Creator, he just had an album come out called Chromacopia. And throughout his whole career, he was talking about how he did not like his dad at all and how he wasn't in his life and things like that. And then on this album, we find out that his mom was actually keeping the dad away, even though the dad wanted to be part of Tyler's life, but the mom kept him away for a reason. So throughout his whole career, he's been saying how much he didn't like his dad, but his dad actually wanted to be part of his life and actually did want to be in there, but his mom kind of stopped that. And she even apologized on the album, said like not to only forgive her, but also forgive him because it wasn't his fault for him not being in the life. Right. So, yeah. Have you had experience with this, Carolyn? You don't have to be any specific or anything like that, but have you had anything like this? Can you relate to this scene at all where it's like the communication just wasn't there, And then finally at some point it was, and you're like, wow, had no idea. Different perspective.
Yeah, I mean, I can't directly relate to this scene, but it does, in terms of different communication styles, it's kind of as I look back on my life and interact with more people, everybody has just a different way that they learn to communicate like their thoughts, their feelings, and show love and show this. And when you're growing up, you tend to think a lot of times that like this is the way it happens in my family, like this is the way that it's done, or you have some other idealized way that it happens. But when you grow up and kind of interact with other people who have like a completely different way of communicating, like it's almost like someone who's like very direct in what they say or like has no problem asking for help. And sometimes if they're paired up with someone who like really doesn't asked for help a lot because their experience growing up was that they didn't get a lot of help, or they kind of get dismissed. So they try to do it themselves and they try to be independent. And then you put those two together and it's like, oh no, like one's just going to like constantly be asking for help from the other. So it's interesting how those assumptions that we make and the way things we learn about communications and relationships growing up kind of carry forward, not just the way that we look back on like the assumptions that we make about our parents or our family, but we bring it to our future relationships. And we're like, okay, this is how I've learned to, express love and relationships. And now I'm going to like kind of bring this forward in the world. And a lot of times we wind up repeating patterns that, maybe aren't the healthiest or just aren't the best for the particular relationship that we're in. And it takes a little bit of like therapy and to kind of unwind, like, to just, again, become aware, because a lot of times it's so ingrained and subconscious that we don't even realize that we're communicating or not communicating in a certain way. So that's why I thought this particular thing was interesting. This scene was interesting because it kind of illustrates, it's not just the fact that she was traumatized by her dad, it's that it's impacting her relationship with her daughter and destroying it in a weird way, like really threatening it. And fortunately, this scene kind of is the realization that gets her thinking like, okay, things were not the way I assumed, and it helps her like get a better relationship with Phoebe. But yeah, that was kind of why I picked this scene.
Nice.
It's interesting, right? I'm working with obviously a ton of folks that are neurodivergent, autistic. And the other day, one of them was like, it's just a terrible day. I'm like, is it? It sounds like you actually had quite a magnificent day. And so you see these cognitive distortions because it wasn't according to routine and regimen in the script. And so they deregulated. But in actuality, if you look through it logically, throughout every phase of the day, it was magnificent. There's just some life-changing moments that this person had in their day for the good. And so I think of this scene as you're looking at this collage of all these pictures, right? But when you're in life, you can't see the big picture. You can't see all these different things and the happiness and joy, because I feel like in day to day, we're so locked in our anxiety or our depression from the past that all we see is like misery right in front of us. But if you look like open your hands, you're like, holy shit, things are actually pretty good. Like there should be some gratefulness in here, and I can make it and do fine and succeed. I do have friends, right? One interaction went poorly. But it doesn't mean that they hate you, and it doesn't mean that you can never make friends because you got some other friends over here. But everyone takes that first initial like triggering thing, then generalize it to the whole day sucks. I might not even, what's the point of even finishing the rest of the day? I'm just going to go back to my room and lay down. And I get it. It takes my clients time to regulate and then, reset. And so I look at that, and she's getting emotional and she's seeing all the love and joy with her parents spent. And I'm just like, yeah, that's the good stuff. There was good stuff. In the couples therapy that I do, there was always good stuff. Starts out magnificent. And then, things get weird because of a million different reasons, right? Or things will happen, and whether you're neurotypical or neurodivergent, you'll have a partner and they start out good. And sometimes it ends up extremely bad, where there's some type of abuse or trauma that's going on. And my clients will be like, well, fuck, how come I didn't see it coming? How could you see it coming? They were magnificent in the beginning. Mm-hmm. And so they'll judge themselves. So I see this scene as being able to see the whole picture, Spence. The funny part is that Boogeyman comes after and like tries to kill her right after that. So I mean, I don't know what metaphor that is.
Her. Yeah.
But the story with mom is like this intergenerational or generational trauma. Mm-hmm. Right, my people know, right? My mom's weird, got a lot of stuff, alcoholism, abuse, tons of stuff. Mom was a hot mess, but she passes, talk to some family members, find out that the stuff that I went through was 50,000 times less than the stuff that her and her siblings, her sisters went through. We see this quite often in these traumatized families. They do their best to do better. And I'm going to pivot because, Spence, I sent you a reel about DMX probably about a month ago, the rapper.
Mm-hmm. Yep.
Where he's talking about all the trauma that his mama put him through. Yep. And just horrific beatings and just, couldn't walk. It's just horrible. Mm-hmm. And then I just sent you another reel the other day of DMX. Did you see that one with him and his son?
Yeah.
Well, I was sobbing during that damn one, boy. And so you see the dynamic of his mother traumatizing him And then this rapper, his son, is like, Dad, where were you? Like, how come you didn't show up? Like, I want to hold you accountable, but I also want you back in my life. And the kid's like, you're terrible. And DMX was like, hey, man, I was the best father you could have ever asked for until like 14. I always tried to show up. Like, even when people didn't care about the things you liked, I showed up. I forced myself to be in your life. And then some weirdness happened. Then they didn't talk for like 15 years.
Right.
Or at least, at least some amount of time, 5 years, whatever. And DMX goes on to tell him, man, I love you. I've never not loved you. I've always did my best to be better than my parents, than my father, my mother. And he just is sobbing. And then they hug. And I'm like, oh my God, this is it. Like, they just broke a lot of these trauma things so he doesn't do it to his kid. The grandson technically of the mom. And I assume that mom went through horrific stuff in her life too. DMX's mom. So this made me think of that, Spence, when you guys start talking about trauma and generational and Egon, her, then the kiddo, right? And then now we're talking about maybe eventually their kids. Hopefully they'll connect better with their children if they decide to have them in the movie, right? If there's like Ghostbusters 700 or whatever. Trauma can be a son of a gun, boy. And it pollutes the way we see the world. It can pollute the way that my folks that are autistic interact with others. Right? I got a lot of my clients like, hey man, my parents are the one that hurt me. Why the hell would I trust anybody else? The people that were supposed to love me didn't give me the time of day. Matter of fact, they said I was stupid or dumb or unintelligent or boring or weird. So of course I masked. Because the people that were supposed to love me told me don't do that. So that trauma is a son of a gun. You can see the statistics on trauma with folks or PTSD with folks that are autistic. Astronomical compared to the general public. And then we get to the obsessiveness of autistics that we not only were we traumatized, but now we lock in on it. Now we see it and replay it. And then you got hyperphantasia like me. Yep. Well, shit, now you can feel it.
Yeah. Now
you can feel the emotions and it's horrible, scary. And I ain't gonna lie, it looked like DMX was feeling all that pain in that video I first sent you, Spence. And then that second video, that shit just destroyed me, bro. I feel like I'm about to cry now. It was just intense. And so it's hard to be neurodivergent, man. And to have that trauma, that masking that you talked about earlier, wow, it's suffocating. Because you do it to fit in, but then they never actually like you. They like the version that you show them. And so it's hard to really enjoy yourself. And then, like you said, you just do things for people. You do more things for people. You do more things for people. And it's like, do they like you or do they like the things you do for them?
Yeah.
And so are they true friends? You don't really know. But if you stop doing things for them, then you won't have friends. So then you don't stop doing things for them. It's a horrible fucking cycle. So welcome to the chaos of our minds. All shown by this collage of photos. And those were beautiful photos of her smiling as a baby.
Yeah.
Yeah. I don't know. Those are my thoughts on that scene. Any sauce you want to put on this, Carolyn? Any sauce? What do you want? Any thoughts about the show or our show, or any thoughts that you want to give to folks in general about these type of things you've touched on today?
Oh gosh. I mean, yeah, I was, as you were sharing those examples, I was just thinking of actually a recent interview that I did on my podcast. It hasn't aired yet, but in terms of the trauma that a lot of autistic people have from the relationships, and even if your parents are like great and understanding, the trauma can come from your peer group. Like I interviewed someone who went through like terrible constant bullying in like elementary school and middle school, and then in high school transferred and like wasn't bullied as much. I'm not even saying the bullying stopped. He's like, it just wasn't as intense. And he said that he was so grateful for the opportunity to like not be bullied as much. And I'm like, I had to pause and sit down with that statement for a minute. It's like, wow, you're grateful that people weren't like hurting you as frequently, like as they were like earlier in your life. It's like, wow. But this is an experience that a lot of autistic people go through with their peers. So it's really hard. But one thing I've noticed from doing my own show is that it's just so, I have conversations with adults like this who have been through these horrible things, and they're like, wonderful people and they have like accomplishments that they've had, and sure, they still struggle with things. Like, it's not all like, and then I found my place and now everything is great and perfect and fine. Like, they still are working through some things, some trauma, and kind of coming to terms with some of the challenges that they have. But I guess to say that there really is hope. Like,
There is.
a lot of times, like, autistic people, like, sometimes adulthood is difficult because you're out of routine and you don't always have the same support. But sometimes it's great because you're not in the rigid expectations of school, which, if it doesn't work for you, like, too bad. Like, you're stuck doing it. So
Facts.
you're finally free in some ways to be more of yourself. So that's one thing I found, is that really there is a lot of hope, and there's multiple ways to get to where you need to be in order to be a surviving and even thriving human being. So that's
Yeah.
something I always think about. There's always ways to get through these things.
It's your choice now, right? You control the game now
Yeah.
as an adult. I'm good, Spence.
All right. Carolyn, thank you so much for coming on. Loved having you. Would you like to give us some plugs? How do people watch your show? Where do they watch the show? What is the name of your show? What is this?
Yes, thank you, Spencer. So the name of the show is Beyond 6 Seconds, and that's a number 6. You can find all of my episodes on my website. That's beyond6seconds.net. And you can also find my podcast on any podcast platform, podcast app that you might use. There's also a YouTube channel if you like to watch videos instead of listen to podcasts. And you can also on my website find all my social media links there as well, like my Instagram, LinkedIn, Facebook, things like that. So yeah, please come check it out. There's all different kinds of formats. I put transcripts for all of my episodes so that you can read along or read those instead. Like, any way that you want to consume the podcast, I'm just happy to get these stories out there. So definitely appreciate you checking out Beyond 6 Seconds.
There you go.
Awesome. Thank you so much for coming on. Would love to have you back at
Facts.
some point. Would
Yeah, I'd love
have
to
you
come back. Thank you.
Awesome.
Yeah, this was great. This was so much fun. Thank you so much for inviting me on the show.
Real quick, Spence. I just want to shout you out too for everything that I always see you doing on Instagram and Threads. How you're always giving people resources, commenting, like you're always supporting people or pushing people and advocating for people. So big shout out to you and how you show up on the internet. Because I know maybe me and you might not have the highest follower count, but you're always like, hey, this person. I always see, right? Because on Threads you can see what people say. And I just wanted to acknowledge that and just how magnificent you show up actually on the online space to promote other counts other than just yourself. Yep.
Yeah.
All right.
Yes.
Awesome.
Awesome.
With that, I'm Spencer. That's Nas. Different Spectrum Podcast.
All right, everyone. Much love. And remember, take care of yourselves.
Or don't.
It's completely up to you. Peace.
Peace.